Hello everyone, I'm Tristan Lee, an engineer here at Edgio, and today I wanted to walk through an example of upgrading your existing Layer 0 site that would be on the version 4 packages and upgrade that to Edgio version 5. So as an example, well, I'm actually going to use our current documentation site. This is a publicly accessible repository for our Edgio documentation. And so I want to update this from version 4.18.1 to the latest of Edgio version 5. So to start, let's head on over here to our documentation, and under references, you'll see a link to the migration to v5 guide. So I'm really not going to go over everything in detail here as far as like changes between version 4 and version 5. You can see a lot of that in our change log here on the documentation site as well. I'm really just going to go through the steps and see what, if any, issues we have along the way. So let's go down here. The first step we need to do is install the Edgio CLI. So if you're familiar with Layer 0, you know that you had to install the Layer 0 CLI globally, and that has since been renamed, so we are going to install it under this new Edgio package namespace. You can use npm or yarn, whichever is more preferred for your site. I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to use npm to install this here. And this is just going to do the global install. So it won't override your existing Layer 0 CLI, so you'll still have the Layer 0 command line that you can still use, and you'll also have the Edgio one separate. So if you are in the process of maybe migrating one or more sites, or for any reason you might still need the old CLI to be installed, it's still there and functional. Okay. So we have got that installed. The next step here is to rename the Layer 0 config file. So with the new rebranding, the Edgio core packages are going to be looking specifically for edgio.config.js. So we can simply come in here and just rename this. And okay, next steps here. Rename the Edgio packages. For each site, rename the remaining references to Edgio packages from @layer0 to @edgio. So this is fairly straightforward. Just open up the package.json, look for anything that begins with @layer0, and update that to @edgio. And then we will update the version, no matter what version you're currently on right now. We will just go ahead and start it at version 5. So let's go ahead and update all of these here. So @layer0. So we'll go ahead and rename that to @edgio. So let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dev dependencies. Is that it? Okay, and one regular production dependency up here. So those 7 will be renamed, and now let's go through these changes and set the version to 5. Okay, no more to be found, done with that. There may be additional Layer 0 dependencies listed in your site's package.json if they are not listed above. So if you are, this is a very good example of that. So these are basically the core packages that's going to be installed on every Edgio or Layer 0 site. There can be more though. So as an example, we also, because this documentation site uses Next, we also have the Edgio React and Next packages in prefetch as well. So there'll be additional ones potentially that's different from the excerpt that we have here. So just make sure you have all of the references replaced. Next, we need to update all the import statements. So if you're using anything that does a require or import of packages, we need to go through and update those as well. I have found the easiest way to do this is going to just be simply searching for them. you probably want to exclude any bundled .layer0 or .edgio, I guess hidden folders, and don't go through and update anything in the lock file. So this project uses yarn, so I need to make sure not to update anything in the yarn.lock file. That's going to get updated here in a future step. Same with package lock.json. Make sure you do not manually update anything, or you can mess up the dependency tree. So we have a few examples here. We have a constant. Actually, this one is not related to the imports. This is actually just a constant branding for this particular project, so we're not going to change that just yet. However, in the Edgio config.js, we need to update this to use the Edgio next connector. So make that change, and then in the actual next configuration, next one is going to be in the next configuration. So the reference here is at layer 0, update to Edgio. And we'll need to update the actual export as well. So this is going to be changed to with Edgio. Actually, let's just rename the symbol so we get it everywhere. Why that? Oh, okay. So I haven't installed it, so it thinks I'm trying to rename the export. So I just need with Edgio. And let's see, down here we should have, yes, with Edgio with service worker. Okay, so that looks complete. And I believe in the search, the last one we have here is the router. Okay. Actually, I'll just do a global replace here in the router. We have 3 occurrences, it looks like. So let's just replace all 3 of those. And it's telling me that the packages don't exist, which is fine. We have not actually installed the packages. We just updated the package.json. So it appears I have, but let's see what else we have for app.ts. We are importing RUM, so I need to update the reference to RUM. And the rest of these are actually example templates. It's not related to the actual project running, so I'm not going to update these changes in here. However, the service worker is used for this project, so we need to update this as well. Okay, that looks like we've got everything. So let's see, next app, rename all Edgios with the next config. We've done that for our next application. Okay, the final step here, we need to install the dependencies. So we have updated our package.json, and you can see by some of these import errors that it can't find the modules. We haven't actually installed and updated the packages yet. So whatever package manager you're using, this particular project uses yarn. Let's just go ahead and run yarn install. Okay, so with the packages all updated, let's go back and look at the final steps here. Update scripts that reference the Edgio CLI. So, okay, let's take a look at the package JSON. We have any scripts in here that reference layer 0, so we have a few dev, build, and deploy scripts. So these also need updated to the Edgio reference. Otherwise, if you continue to run layer 0 dev or layer 0 build, it's going to attempt to use the old CLI to bundle the new project. And because we changed all the different references, the configuration file names, things like that, the bundle's going to fail. So let's go through and lastly, just do a search and replace like that. Let's do them line by line to see. I do not want to change the site name yet, just the scripts. Okay, that is completed. Review your code for duplicate query string parameters. Okay, so there was a change between version 4 and version 5 that changed how duplicate query string parameters were handled. This is not an issue, I know, with the documentation, but something to keep in mind for your site if it does fall into this scenario. So at this point, the migration should be complete. Of course, you want to verify everything before actually pushing this out. I will mention that if you are using any CI workflows to, say, do builds and deploys, run tests, things like that, you're going to want to go through and make sure that references in here as well are updated. Let's see if we deploy. Yeah, so if whenever I make a commit and push this out, our GitHub action for stage goes through and deploys this using the layer 0 deploy script defined in our package.json, which we certainly just renamed Edgio deploy. So make sure you go through these other files as well for other references for layer 0. Since I'm not actually worried about committing this right now, I just want to verify that it works. I'm going to go ahead and run Edgio dev to launch our site locally in the dev environment, just to verify that everything bundles and the site loads. Okay, so we can see that by our dev tools down here, these are now updated with the Edgio branding. If we look back at the snapshot, I don't know if it's going to be included in this. Let's look at where my current deployment on version 4 is. Yeah, so you can see down here the dev tools on the old version 4 of layer 0. We are still branded layer 0. And on our new example here, we have Edgio. So everything appears to be working correctly. So the last thing I want to do here, since it's working locally, is I just want to verify that everything does fully build for a production build and deploy. So I am going to run Edgio deploy, and this is going to deploy to my private space where I have where I'm actually testing this migration. Okay, so it looks like deployment was complete. Let's head back on over and look at the deployments of the site, and we'll find the latest one. So here is the latest deployment to this, version 5.06, 4 minutes ago. And let's just load it up and verify that everything works. So I see that we have everything in the latest, the dev tools, pages are loading, everything looks to be working. So, of course, with this said, I mean, there needs to be additional testing along the way, but that pretty much wraps up all the necessary steps to upgrade from layer 0 to Edgio. So one thing I'm just noticing that should be a part of the migration guide is whenever you do a bundle, the bundle goes into a .edgio folder, the production build. Previously, it went into .layer 0. This one will not be used anymore, so I can go ahead and delete that. .edgio, we need to keep that locally, but we don't want to commit it to our repository. There's bundled modules and everything else in there that's not needed for to be committed into source code. So if you open up the git ignore, we see a line here for layer 0. We can just add another one for .edgio. And now this is being excluded from your changes, and everything looks to be completed. Now, I will say that going through, do not go through and do a global find and replace. Make sure you're going through and actually looking at the individual lines. There may be a possibility that you go through and replace something unintended, and you're trying to trace down an error based on some rogue text that you may have replaced. So I would avoid doing that. Just make sure you go through and look at the individual items, make sure they make sense to be changed. There is going to be some case sensitivity differences between these. So in package.json, everything's lowercase. But as you can see in the next config file with Edgio or with layer 0, it was uppercase there. So you just need to make sure of the case changes as well when you're doing your replace. So that wraps this up. If you do have any questions, make sure to check out our community forums. I'd be happy to answer any questions along the way that you may have run into trying to migrate your site to Edgio v5.